Seventh way we've come up with that's very prevalent of ignoring sin on the planet is refusing to see pain and suffering is the result of sin. So not seeing cause and effect. Sin creating pain.
Yes. In other words, we sort of believe pain and suffering comes from something else.
Yeah.
And most people now have the philosophy that pain and suffering comes from evolution, or it comes from, you know, the fact that we've got, you know, all sorts of things wrong with us in terms of our body or our intellect or whatever, or it comes from accidents or limited resources or anything other than human choice. Basically, is what we want to believe, right? And so that's part of the problem. But yes, refusing to see our pain and suffering as a result of sin is obviously going to cause us to believe that sin is okay because there's no pain and suffering that results from it.
Yes. So why can't I see how sin causes pain and suffering? So if I put that in a longer way.
Sure.
Why can't we see that our own sin contributes to the pain and suffering in our life and in the lives of others and the pain and suffering that society generally feels? Is it true to say we can't see that, or is it a willful thing again?
It's a willful thing, obviously.
Right.
Yes. When you say why can't we, well, we've listed already in this discussion many reasons why we can't.
Yeah.
But if we summarize it, basically we believe or we want to continue sinning, and we feel that if we could trace pain and suffering back to sin, then we'd probably have to stop sinning, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want to.
No, because we want the results of it.
Because we want the results of sin.
Or we don't want to feel pain, or we don't want
it's interesting, we don't want all the results of sin.
Yeah.
Because the pain and suffering is a primary result of sin. But we don't want to acknowledge that it is the primary result of sin.
Yes.
Because if we did so, we'd have to go back to the sin and go, should we be doing this sin?
Yes.
So for example, when we act in addiction with each other, we don't want to see that that's a sin.
Yeah.
We don't want to see the pain and suffering that causes.
Yeah.
And in not seeing the pain and suffering it causes, I can then continue the addiction of feeding codependent addictions. I can continue in that, and I don't have to face that it's the pain and suffering that I'm in is caused by that. Right? And this is the problem that we have, is that we're constantly trying to deny the effect, because that helps us deny the cause.
Yes.
The effect being pain and suffering, the cause being sin. So if I can deny pain and suffering is caused by sin, then I can basically say, no, pain and suffering is caused by something else.
Yes.
It's impurities, it's diseases, it's other problems that we can't really control. It's the way God created us. And we come up with thousands, literally thousands of excuses.
The world's littered with them.
The world's littered with them, and it's we'd be going on for months if we had to mention every one of them. Thousands of excuses that we come up with that basically say, the bottom line is they basically say, pain and suffering is not caused by sin. Yeah. It's caused by something else.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why we don't want to recognise the link between the two.
Yes. So just to summarise then, why I don't trace the effects of sin back to each cause, that's because I don't want to acknowledge that the pain and suffering in my life right now is basically the result of sins I've engaged in or not forgiven in the past.
Well, it's not only that. If we look at this question of why I don't want to trace the effects of sin back to each cause, if I could see correlations between the actual sin, right, the actual pain and suffering that's resulted from the sin, the flavour of it, the type of pain and suffering. For example, cancer in my bowel, that's traceable back to this particular cause.
Yeah.
But if I want to keep doing that particular thing, then I don't really want to do this tracing.
Yes.
I really want to say, no to myself.
Yep.
No, it's because of genetic structure of the body, and God must have made a mistake, right?
So if we take cancer of the bowel and we say, I don't know definitively, but we say that's produced by a very strong projection towards others that they demand that they give me a sense of worth.
Yes, which is its primary cause.
Okay. Good shot in the dark there. Yeah. So if I want to, you're saying if I want to continue to have that demand met by others.
Yes. Given the fact that I don't want to feel the pain of having no worth.
Well, that's why I want the demand.
That's why I want the demand met.
So I've got this, then I develop bowel cancer, and instead of wanting to see there's a correlation between this effect, cancer, and some kind of sin within me.
Yes, my demand of others that they meet my addiction to have
a sense of worth.
Because I don't want to cry about having none.
Yep. So I'm not going to make that trace. I'm not going to link that. I'm going to say it's genetics and it's in my family and it's my diet and all these other things.
Yep. And anything possible other than the actual thing that it is.
It is, yeah.
Now let's look at something like lung cancer, another example. Lung cancer is caused by the addiction to suppress emotion of grief by getting other people to constantly believe that you're a good person and you don't need to feel grief.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So there's my addiction. It's a demand that I'm placing on other people. I keep on feeding my addiction through this demand, causes me to have lung cancer.
Yeah.
What do I do with it? I go, no, it's not that. No, it's smoking, or it's well, no, I haven't smoked actually, so it's not smoking. What is it?
Secondhand smoke.
Secondhand smoke.
So I can blame others.
Or it's like, because they burn off a lot around us, or well, there's no real reason, it just happens, and who knows why it happens. And we'd rather believe anything other than that everything has a cause.
Yes.
And yet scientifically, science says everything
has a cause.
Every effect has a cause.
Yeah.
Interesting. So scientifically, I believe everything has a cause.
Yeah.
Every effect has a cause, but emotionally, I don't.
Yeah.
So how ethical am I being now?
Yeah.
I'm allowed to trace the physical effect back to a physical cause.
Yeah.
But I ignore all of the other potential causes, emotional, spiritual, of that physical thing.
Yeah.
Because it helps me get away with a lot of other feelings and emotions that I can then suppress as a result of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are very insidious with this. We are not tracing effects back to their actual causes. And science is getting really bad with this in regard to emotion, right? And spirituality. They're basically saying everything is physical, right? Not that, see, this is the trouble, is that when you're focused on everything just being physical, you're not willing to consider that there's a spiritual part of you and a soul-based part of you and a love-based part of you and emotional part of you that all have effects. And yet logically, they are energies in motion, just like light or sound or any other energy in motion, and therefore they must have effects, right? But no, we want to deny that all that is possible. Why? Because really, we'd like to refuse to see that all that pain and suffering is a result of a sin we're committing.
Or have committed.
Or have committed.
Or that others have committed.
That we have to emotionally feel in order to release, and that we have to either forgive or repent for.
Yeah.
And we want to deny all that so that we can sort of get away with continuing the sin, and of course it just ignores all the pain and suffering and makes all the pain and suffering seem ethereal and imaginary, almost like.
Yeah, or
it's like nobody's got any idea why it happens. Is it better to believe that, or is it better to believe no? Everything happens for a reason. Let's go and find the reason. This is where we're not being very logical. Humanity is not being logical. They think that every physical thing that happens has a reason. Now, they're always looking for the reasons then. So why isn't every physical thing that's happening to my body have a reason, aside from just being physical? Why might there not be other reasons that I cannot see, like the wind blowing the trees, something I can't see but can feel? why can't it be the same with this?
Yeah.
You see, it makes no sense. But we love it making no sense because we can continue the sin and ignore the effect to a degree. But the sad effect of that is that we never cure pain and suffering. That's the sad effect. Yeah.
Yeah. So just finally here, one more thing from our notes. So you've said a lot about why we don't want to trace the effects of sin back to its cause. And that helps us avoid really this cause and effect relationship that's always occurring.
Yes.
But it also means that we can blame either other people or other things. Like, for example, you said the physical aspects. We can blame genetics.
We can blame
whatever.
things we have no control over.
Yes.
In preference to.
Instead of taking personal responsibility for the things that we have control over, which is removing the emotional cause from within us.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we prefer to blame things we have no control over and then use techniques to try to cure them.
Yeah.
Rather than actually take responsibility for the fact is if it's happening to our body, we do have control over it.
Yeah.
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 So something's going on that we do have control over. And that particularly applies to pain, suffering, disease, and accidents and all those so-called accidents and all those things. They are all perpetrated by the condition of the soul interacting with the law, as we've so stated.
Yes.
So in the end of the day, we need to start seeing the relationship between cause and effect, and it's logical to do so. That's what amazes me. Engineers and scientists and doctors are very logical when it comes to the physical, and totally illogical when it comes to the emotional.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. If you were going to be purely logical, you'd think you'd apply the logic in all aspects of life, which include the emotional and the spiritual, the love-based issues.
Do you think it's because, I think it's because people, there's so much resistance to emotion, that people aren't feeling very much emotion. And so emotion seems illogical to them because they're so disconnected from it.
No, I don't think it's just that.
Right.
I don't think it's just that. It primarily comes from the desire to sin.
Yeah.
The desire to do what we suspect is wrong. Thinking and wanting there to be no consequence. That's where it really comes from.
Yeah.
And it also comes from, like we've mentioned, supporting of false belief systems and all these other things that we've mentioned as well. But honestly, it is a very silly condition of humanity to apply cause and effect to the physical and yet not apply it to things we can't see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bearing in mind that emotion must be energy in motion for us to be able to feel it. And bearing in mind that we know that there are energies in motion through measurements. We know that there are energies in motion such as light and sound and other energies of motion that we can't see, but we hear or feel the effect of. So, if bearing that in mind, it makes no logical sense to assume that pain and suffering doesn't have a constant, measurable cause.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. All right, just to recap this section then, which was all about why individuals and society overlook or ignore sin.
Yep.
So I'll just go through our points finally.
Yep.
We ignore sin by refusing to believe sin is real.
Yep.
We ignore sin by refusing to believe that sin is detrimental or harmful.
Yep.
We ignore sin by believing that it's normal. So we talked about a couple of different ways that can happen. We ignore sin because it supports my false belief systems, and my false belief systems support sin. We ignore sin because we just don't want to feel emotion. We sin because we want the results of sin. And finally, we refuse to see that pain and suffering is the result of sin. So we refuse and deny this very relationship you're just speaking about, which is the cause and effect. Yeah.
They're some of the reasons. Obviously, they're not all of them.
No.
So we need to understand that this is not an exhaustive discussion about the subject.
Yeah.
But it will hopefully, what our goal here is to hopefully help people come to terms with the fact that pain and suffering and sin are all related, and that there are many, many reasons why we wish to deny sin. And if we continue to deny sin, we will never repent or forgive.
Yeah.
And if that continues, then we are consigning not only our own lives, but the entire of humanity to the same kind of existence we've always had.
Yeah.
Right? And so no change is possible.
Yeah.
So it's very important people see that relationship. And maybe after this discussion, people will start saying, well, I need to have a good look at myself as to my reasons about why I don't want to believe in sin, and why I want to think, why I want to keep sinning, and why
I want to minimize sin, how I'm minimizing
what
sin.
emotions I'm trying to avoid. And, hopefully the discussion will help people open their mind a bit to that concept of examination.
Yes.
Of the truth of the situation,
Yeah.
rather than just putting up with pain and suffering for the rest of their life and then having to deal with the reason for it after they pass.
Yeah. Very good. All right.